Welcome to Poets from the Neighborhood. My name is Louise Collin.
The poems we'll be reading today, poems written by your friends and neighbors. My first poem is Up on a Pedestal by Vera Jaar from her book Joy of Being. Please let me, O God, to put my mother up on a pedestal made of the purest gold. Adorn it with precious gems of Ceylon and poetry garlands strewn on pouring love from my heart. Please grant me, O God, poetic words melting like prime milk chocolate, solid as pure gold, glistening smooth, picking her out of all angels, placing in her womb, you blessed, poor soul like me, forever.
This is a poem that I wrote a few nights ago on waking from a lovely dream. So I called it On Waking from a Dream by Louise Collin. It isn't her. It's not her eyes, nor nose, nor mouth. She isn't dressed the way she dressed. But when I dream of one who climbs the winding road before me and knows the way to find the door that lets us in or out of that strange, dream-roomed house walled in blue dark fogs, and which Indian tribe lived here below the moving mountain, or if this book, which no one wrote, is one I like, the phrases fill my mind with sharpened thoughts. I know it is her. She has returned, wanting, at least for a while, the world we made together more than paradise, or wanting me.
I would like to read to you the poem called Stirred that I wrote about 4 years ago. It is in my book, Potpourri of Poetry and Song. Lord, your handiwork is manifest wherever I look, from cascading rivers that cleave primeval rock to song of babbling brook. Likewise, the rush of your love crumbles my obdurate will into humble submission and stirs my being with hymns of adoration.
This is a poem called Office Politics by Michael J. Tucker. You are the red-headed fool. You became the spider's ally. Stupidly you ran to her web. You didn't know you'd be her tool. Hushed whispers in an alabaster land, agreed murmuring would poison the well. She would sharpen the knife and place it in your hand. But your mind is too small, your eyes too weak. She knows your sin is greed. She will stab the bear's back if you can gain. Alas, there'll be none in the destruction you seek. She pulls your string. You do the deed. No metamorphosis for you. The spider gets the win, her competition gone. Naively, you followed her lead. You are now her slave. If she has her way in your red-headed way, you take the bale and stumble forward to your mistake. Headlong you rush to a terrible day. Your feeble attempt misses the bear. The owl sees through the sham, and that's too bad for you, because the bear really did care. You are of no use to anyone now. You lost the bear and failed the spider. Now you'll lose your tongue and be carried off by the owl.
My last poem today is Share One Earth by Vera Jaar from her book Joy of Being. We are all the same, deep down in the heart. We all seek happiness, but go different routes. We yearn for peace, wish for heavenly bliss, yet we fight each other in endless, pointless battles. Green and blessed earth, one together that we share, land that is divided but joined by the oceans, one moon for the one sun to share with all. Help raise one another, all nations, not just for us.
This is Rescue by our good friend S.R. or Sally Lee. I take her to the fields with me. Now she's outgrown the puppy look. She has tufts of hair in the wrong places. No time for our wrong dog here. She was on her way to death. I took her one night and no one said anything. Ramus assigned me the farthest spot beyond the stone cutters, a longer walk, a silent day, right for me and her. She brings in my food, one rabbit for lunch, two other small animals for supper. I take her to the fields with me. They would kill her back at the sleeping place, for we slaves do not have dogs. I sleep in back of the cattle shed. When I must report in, she waits there for me. Ramus is a good overseer, a good man. He knows when to make exceptions. I care that no one pays me attention. I take her to the fields with me. Thank you for watching Poets from the Neighborhood. We hope you'll join us again soon. Welcome to Poets from the Neighborhood. My name is Louise Collin.
And I'm Lydia Esmer. We hope you'll enjoy reading poems written by writers. I would like to open today with a poem by Vera Jaar from her book Joy of Being. It is titled Humanity. Without fire shines no pure gold. Without pain beats no loving heart. Without faith rejoices no true soul. Without God spared no humanity.
This is a poem called Looking Up at Midnight by Mary Lane. Driving home at midnight through a savage thunderstorm, I stopped my car in a southern country town to look up at ancient structures standing solid round a square just as tall as their church spires. Our little buildings take me to times before and after, between the glory wars. Show me wagons, cars, and airplanes, trains whistling through the valleys when the people built their futures as they built these solid structures just as tall as their church spires. Once a train that snaked at midnight past my bed woke me from an echoed dream in which spirit told me twice, "Stop, go back. The road we're on goes nowhere." And where, I questioned spirit, do you think we choose to go? Should we stay or leave these buildings standing solid round the square, just as tall as their church spires?
My next poem is Lament of McDonald's, 2009, written by Nancy Fletcher Bloom. Coffee, drive-through McDonald's roundabout, jungles of green Nandina bushes gone. Swaying masses of tall bamboos, steam rising, gone. 7 cars ahead of me, lined up to get somewhere first. Close my window, shut out sounds of landscape clippers. No water surges through these updated gutters. No water cascades on the cold concrete walk. No hiding place for large cat eyes to peer, to pounce. Sounds of distant gongs, the tinkle of wind chimes, gone. Welcome to McDonald's. Place your order, please.
Creation by Susie Margaret Ross. My pen dances across the page. Words tumble everywhere. Poetry blossoms spill from my heart.
My next poem is Alone by S.R. Lee. Extends everywhere. Rich green leaves soak up sunlight, move according to energies of wind and raindrops. The tree prospers, shows its strength, limbs twist and stretch, form together a magnificent green ball. In its freest form, Solitary, uninhibited stands the one lone tree, subject to storm, wind gust, lightning strike, sunny weather.
A Day in the Life by Susie Margaret Rose. A friend shows me an emu egg. The shell has a hole in it, and no baby emu is inside. I look inside anyway, trying to envision a tiny emu cradle with an even smaller mobile of little people dangling from it.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Awesome. We're good.
Point at me when you're ready, Matt, or Newt. Excuse me.
Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, John.
Hey, good to see you.
Slight delay, ladies and gentlemen.
They should at least move those chairs.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch, and this is the Public Affairs Roundtable, presented each month by the Williamson County Chamber of Commerce, affectionately known as Williamson, Inc. And we've got a great show for you this morning. Our guest this morning is Commissioner John Schroer from the Tennessee Department of Transportation. Good morning, John. And with us also is Matt Largent, the CEO, President and CEO of our chamber. And Matt's going to help me keep John online here and keep us all, the conversation flowing. And we appreciate both of you being here with us this morning. John, former mayor of Franklin, lots of other notable things on your resume, John. But one that I hadn't seen before that showed up in this last one I saw was chairman of the Committee of Finance and Administration for the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials.
Correct.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's called AASHTO, and AASHTO is our national organization for all, every state DOT is a member of that, and it's an organization that not only does lobbying, but also really provides all sorts of information and expertise to the DOTs. In fact, they provide most of the software programs that we use for billing and other things. They actually write a lot of the specifications for roads that Federal Highways actually adopts, and they have a big financial component in that, and dealing with Congress and how we fund transportation nationally, and I'm chairman of that committee that does that.
So does that give us more leverage to get more money back from Washington? Or?
So who's got leverage on Washington, I guess, is the question. I don't know of anybody that does right now. So.
And I understand you're leaving for South Korea. Is that
I am.
Today?
Sunday morning.
Sunday morning.
Yeah. I'm speaking at the International World Transportation Congress or something as my position in AASHTO, and we're going to have a discussion about funding, how America funds transportation as opposed to how other countries do it.
Right.
And so I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Okay, now I understand you all that TDOT buried a time capsule at Bicentennial Mall recently.
We did. It was July 1st was our actual 100th anniversary. We started July 1st, 1915. That's when we were actually chartered.
Okay.
And so July 1st this year was our 100th anniversary, and we buried some stuff in the time capsule.
And it will be unveiled again in about 100 years?
God, I think so. I'm not positive about that. But
My
you know what? I don't really care when it's unveiled, to be truthful. So
my question is, will Mac Hatcher be done by then?
Well, I've got a great response.
That was a setup.
I've got a great response. It depends on how our legislators vote.
Okay, you and the governor recently have taken a tour around the state.
We have.
To talk specifically about transportation, roads, and
Correct.
needs. And we also had a transportation summit here in Williamson County. Mayor Roger Sanderson organized that, held up at the new Tractor Supply headquarters. What have you learned? Or have you learned anything?
I think I learned a lot. One is several things I learned is that I think people understand that we have lots of needs across the state, and that transportation is on everybody's mind, and wondering, everybody's wondering, when is that road that they need, whether it's Mac Hatcher or Lamar Avenue in Memphis or Alcoa Highway. I mean, I can give you a long list of projects that are desperately needed across the state, whether that they have to do with safety components, which is our priority. We're doing our best to curb and to cut down the number of fatalities on our highways. That's really our number one priority. Congestion is our second one, and economic development is our third. And so those are those top three priorities. We have a list of about 8 or 9 as we prioritize things. So we learned that across the state, every community has a road. We also learned that a lot of and that in order to do the things that we need to do, we're going to have to figure out how to fund more roads, and that's part of the conversation, and that's the hard part for a lot of people to look at. And we also don't want to fall behind our neighboring states and our competing states when it comes to transportation. If you were here as I was when Ned McWhorter was governor, and Ned McWhorter used to always say that education plus roads equals jobs, and that was very true back then. It is even maybe more true today but as an example, on an education standpoint, workers are being required to be better educated these days. They're higher technical schools. We want the governor's goal is to be the best state for high-performing, high-quality jobs in the Southeast, and part of that means you have to have a great education.
Right.
The other thing is I work really closely with our economic development Commissioner Randy Boyd, and there's not a single economic development job or deal that comes to the state of Tennessee that the Department of Transportation doesn't touch and have an impact on. And we can look all the way from the McEwen interchange, which was a huge issue for Williamson County, and maybe that's what kicked off Nissan and other things.
Right.
And then all the way down to Saturn Parkway, we've got, so you can just see them. VW has a huge interchange in the road. So all of those things are important, but they cost money. We helped funded the Hankook Tire project, which is in Montgomery County. Big deal. Great for Montgomery County. Great for the state of Tennessee. It was a $30 million commitment for us that wasn't on any of our radars 3 months before we committed to it. So that's another issue that we've got to look at. So
Right. Matt, you sit in a seat that most of us don't get to see, but you talk to a lot of corporate CEOs and management teams about Williamson County and so forth. How does the traffic and how does that enter in from an economic development point of view from your side of the fence?
Sure, and I think the commissioner said it really well when he said education plus roads equals jobs. And I think from our standpoint, we spent a lot of time with our existing companies in Williamson County because we know about 85, and quite frankly, it's closer to 90% of the new jobs that are created come from our existing companies. And one of the big challenges they have is around traffic, transportation, congestion in particular. And for a company, it's actually pretty simple because what happens is it limits the potential labor pool of which they can draw from. As big as Nashville is getting, we're still not to the level that other of our competing cities are, just in terms of population. Mm-hmm. So when you meet with these companies and you meet with these consultants who work with the companies, they will say to me, you're still too small for some of these major headquarters, and plus, so therefore, they need a much bigger labor shed to deal from, geographically to draw from. And if congestion becomes a reason why people can't get to work in a, I don't know how you define a decent amount of time, it will limit the opportunities for these companies to relocate and to grow here. So transportation, just like affordable housing, is one of those issues that's now become an economic development issue because we're at such a critical juncture in Middle Tennessee.
So have we put a number on that? Is that something we can quantify, or say we're losing X number of dollars a year because we're getting behind on?
Yeah, it's really tough to quantify. I was in Atlanta a couple weeks ago, and as I was going to the different meetings in the passenger seat, I was taking screenshots of Google Maps and showing how much red there was in Atlanta throughout the day. And again, I don't know what it takes for us. You know, we can say all the time, how do we not become Atlanta? But, I mean, less than 4 hours away, we have the poster child of where we don't want to be. And, you know, we're on the same trajectory as what Atlanta is. So I don't know what it's going to take for people to finally kind of wake up and get truly serious about not just conversations, but actual put some funding. And more than that, it's the political will to make some of these hard decisions that will help get us out of the situation so we don't look and see what our future is down the road.
So if I may interject.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, unfortunately, and I'd say in general, politicians, the political world actually is often and mostly reactionary.
Yep.
And that's often because that's kind of what the people want. They don't want politicians spending money until for some reason, until it has to happen. And that's the wrong way to govern, and we have to look at how to do things in the future. What's scary about Atlanta, and using that as a perfect example, everybody says, oh, we don't want to be another Atlanta. I completely agree. I don't want to be another. But you know what happened? So this year, just 3 months ago, Georgia finally passed a new funding bill for transportation. So they're going to raise $1 billion a year to fund transportation across the state of Georgia. Well, look how long it took for them to do it, and look what kind of crap they had to be in before they did it. And that's why we don't want to be there. That's why we have to talk to our legislators and say, we don't want to be Atlanta. We're going to have a good, legitimate plan to make sure that we aren't. But you're going to have to stand up and vote. Yep. You're going to have to stand up and say, I don't want Nashville and Tennessee to become an Atlanta. And it's going to take some political will that so far we haven't really seen.
And it's going to take actually convincing your constituents this is the right thing to do. I mean, this is really when leadership becomes a critical issue. It's the same reason we spent a few days in Austin a few weeks ago taking our chamber trip there, really focusing on transportation. As you saw, Dave, you know, they are still digging out of what mistakes they made in the 80s. So, you know, again, you have two very serious examples of where we don't want to be, but the only way we get out is through great leadership. And frankly, political will.
And it takes money.
Yeah,
and there's no, you know, one thing that we've talked about is that I think we run, and those of you that worked with me in the city of Franklin, I know Eric Stuck is here. I mean, we've always looked at our organization, and even the school board. The first thing that I have done anytime I've come into an organization was to make sure it was run properly, run correctly, run efficiently. Those are the things that you have to do first. And we really have done that in Tennessee. As an example, we spend the third least per capita than any DOT in the nation. Think of that, the third least per capita. We spend the third least per vehicle miles traveled than any state in the nation, yet we have the third best roads in the nation. Well, you can't do that unless you're spending your money very properly. Only 2% of our dollars actually goes to administration costs. 91% of our dollars go back to communities in the form of road projects and grants and maintenance. So we're spending that money. So my point is, we can't save ourselves out of this problem anymore. We're going to have to provide dollars to do it.
Let's come back to the political piece here in a few minutes, but tell us, for somebody that hadn't been in one of these transportation summits or so forth, how we got in this hole to begin with, the funding hole that we're in.
Well, it's pretty simple. We haven't raised any additional, we haven't raised how we fund transportation since 1989. So both, and then 1993 for the federal side. So all of us pay basically an amount per gallon on our gasoline when we fill up. So, and actually it's not done when you fill up, but I won't get into that. So just assume that's when you pay for it. And it's 39.4 cents in the state of Tennessee. It's been 39.4 cents since 1993, including federal and state. So think of that, since 1993. You're paying the same per gallon on gasoline that you did in 1993? Well, first of all, you have to know that how many of y'all are driving here or on television, driving a car that gets much better gas mileage than a car that you got in 1993? All of us do. And so that's a huge issue. The other thing is, think about, and this is a big component of that, is commercial tractor trailers. Back in 1989 or 1993, those two dates, 89 state, 93 federal, so I intermix those sometimes. Tractor trailers were getting like 4 miles to gallon. They get 8 miles to gallon right now, so that's double the miles per gallon. So in essence, all of us have been enjoying a tax decrease since 1993 because we're paying less to use our roads every day because our cars are getting better gas miles. Now, I think that's great. I think that's the way it should be. We also have, while it's not a big impact today, we have cars that aren't buying any gasoline at all. And, one is made here in Tennessee. And so we have to look at those components, but that's not going to solve our problem. Our problem, quite frankly, is, and if Eddie Hood were here, he'd tell you, so in 1993, it would take about $30,000 to pave a mile of road. Today, it takes about $100,000 to pave a mile of road, and yet our revenue is not increasing. So you just can't sustain that. It's simply that. And let's think about the growth of the state of Tennessee and population growth in Williamson County and in Rutherford County, but across the state. We are projected to have our population increase by 2.5 million people in the next 25 years. 2.5 million people. And 45% of that growth is supposed to be right here in Middle Tennessee. Well, you just can't do that and not figure out that you're going to have to fund it. And and that's what happened in Atlanta. Look, they boomed during the 80s and the 90s. Well, they didn't keep up with it because they didn't have the money to do it. It doesn't have anything to do with the Department of Transportation. I'll build all the roads I can if I got the money to do it. I have no problem doing that. We just don't have the revenue to keep up with the growth and the wear and tear on our roads. One more thing.
Go ahead.
Is our roads are getting older. Like an old house. A lot of us live in older houses. The older they get, the more maintenance they take. 65 was built in 1967. Do the math. That's 50 years old. So, or 40 years old. So our bridges and our roads are deteriorating just through age. And it takes more to maintain them, and we are a fix-it-first stage. We want to make sure our own assets are maintained before we build anything new. And I always use an example. You don't build a pool in your backyard if your roof leaks, or you shouldn't. So some of us might. Kerry, my banker over here, he probably wouldn't lend me any money to build a pool because he's got a mortgage on my house, so he wouldn't want my roof leaking if I was building a pool. So we've got to do that first, and I think that's the conservative way to do it. One more thing is we don't have any debt. We don't borrow any money, and so we're a pay-as-you-go state, which is how I think we should be, and how I think we should run the state.
That was a great segue into my next question, John. Is you're well known, and the governor's well known for saying we're not going to borrow money to build these roads, but that's kind of like telling a young couple when they first get married that you got to save up all your money before you buy a house. In a fast growth area like we're in now, why would you not? And I'll go back to a day several years ago in Franklin City Hall, not long after you became mayor. We had a conversation, and it was about, I think, the police station, and whether or not
lots of conversations about the police station.
Whether or not we were going to borrow $30 million or so to build that police station, and the developer John Schroer explained to me the economics of borrowing money and building now instead of letting inflation increase the cost of what you need down the road. Now, does that not work as well on roads?
Well, let me ask you this question. If you had the money to build the police station, would you borrow the money to do it?
No.
Okay. So here's the situation. If I were starting out fresh, I couldn't start out fresh and not borrow the money to do what we do. But we are in a position right now financially that and I'll get to the good reason for that, but that we do have a road program. We have money coming in, It's just not as much as we need to cover our bases. So borrowing money might help us in the short run. Borrowing money to build a police station might be the right thing to do because it's a one-time expense and it's got a 35 or 40-year lifespan, and you're not going to building roads. We can't stop. We got to continue. So what happens if you borrow money? So we do a $2 billion bond issue as an example. Well, what happens is that and Kent Starbrough, who's head of the road builders, is here. He and I don't always agree on this particular subject, but you know what would happen? $2 billion worth of money that I'd have to spend. You know, you don't want to sit on that money. So all of a sudden, I'm building $2 billion worth of roads. Well, a couple things happen. One is I really don't believe that the market is ready to absorb $2 billion worth of road projects, which means that there would be an inflationary cost to that, and we would bring in other road builders from outside the state. The inflation fact, there would be supply and demand, so prices would go up. In my department, we're not necessarily prepared to do $2 billion worth of roads, so we'd have to hire a lot of people to get all that done, and that sounds good. But as soon as we ate out that $2 billion, then we're back down to the problem is then we're back down to below where we are today, and so you have this huge cycle, which is not how you run a business. If you run a business, you don't want to go ups and downs and ups and downs. You want to be a steady growth pattern, right. And so I want to maintain the steady growth pattern. And we can do that with not a lot of effort. And the other thing, which is really important, we as a state, I'm really proud of this factor. We have I'm going to do some of the least. We have the least debt per capita than any state in the nation. And the governor just got back from New York. They did their rounds of working with the rating agencies, and we got a great rating with AAA in 2 and AA plus in 1. And which means we can borrow money as cheap as anybody, but we also don't need to do that. We have under $6 billion of debt. Texas has over $28 billion just in transportation debt, and there are states across the way that are spending all of their state dollars to pay on debt service, which means they're leaving federal dollars in the pipeline in Washington. They don't get their federal dollars because you have to have a 20% match of state dollars to do that. So every year we get an actual kick of extra dollars from states that have left money in Washington. This year it was $36 million. Last year it was $55 million that we were able to draw down in September and spend in September because we had enough cash to do the match and other states didn't. I think it's the right way to do it, and we're functioning, and I think pay-as-you-go is the best way to do it because we're just not pushing it back for our other generations to pay for as well. Let's just take care of it now.
How many other states do pay-as-you-go, John?
There's 5 states in the nation that do, but in my job as the chair of the Finance Administration Committee, what's funny is I get lots of calls from other now secretaries and commissioners asking me how we do that because they're trying to get out of debt. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're spending all your state dollars to pay debt service and you're leaving federal dollars in Washington, first of all, I need to say federal dollars are not federal dollars, they're our dollars. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to leave Tennessean dollars in Washington for another state to get.
Right.
I want to bring them back home. Now, they got a lot of strings attached to them, but I still want to bring them back home.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I believe it's the right thing to do.
That's a good answer. Better than I was expecting, actually. So.
You know, every once in a while I surprise you, don't I, Dave?
That was pretty good.
I've been working on that answer all night long.
Let me just ask just another follow-up to this last point. So what are the other 4 states? How do they sort of get out of this mess too, the same way? I mean, what are the things we can pick up from those other 4 states that maybe can work into
Wyoming is, well, first of all, they don't have the population that we have, which makes it a little. It's Iowa and Wyoming. And, but Wyoming just raised their gas tax 10 cents.
Okay.
And so you know, this didn't just happen upon us. I mean, this isn't like I didn't go down there and say, "Oh my gosh, look what's happening." You know, this has been happening for a long time, and we haven't been addressing the problem for a long time. I'm going to mention the school system. When I was chairman of the school board, we were in a situation where we had growth within the Franklin Special School District, and what we realized was quickly was that the Franklin Special School District lines are fixed; they don't grow. And so instead of trying to fix it piecemeal, I said let's figure out what our total growth of the school system will be over a period of time, and if we're going to borrow money, let's borrow the money and fix it to that. And we did. And I got kind of not chastised, but I had a lot of people complaining because at the time Williamson County schools everybody was in trailers and mobile school, and we had made a policy that none of our children would be in portable classrooms. And so we decided to build out to the growth of the city, and we did. And if you all will notice, the Franklin Special School District hasn't had to do a capital campaign because we did it when we were there. So we need to plan for that, and we just haven't done that. If you're going to grow by 2.5 million people in the next 25 years, you ought to start planning for it, and you ought to start preparing for it. And that's one of the things that we're doing. That's why we're trying to bring this to the people to make them aware. And while you say it's the legislators have to convince somebody, I don't think that's right. I think it's the people sitting in this audience on television are going to have to convince the legislators. Okay, guys, we need this. We want this. And it's in 1986 when the Governor Lamar Alexander, I got roads on the brain, passed the 86 road program, he said, all I want from you is a tank of gas a year. You give me a tank of gas a year and I'll fix your roads. Now, I'm not sure the numbers are quite the same, but they're actually not far off. And so think about that. Or I want a Happy Meal a month from y'all. Do that. How many of y'all drinking Starbucks coffees right now? Give me a couple Starbucks a month, and we'll build my catcher.
Interesting. There's we'll come back to the gas tax again in a minute, but Speaker Harwell, I think, just in the past couple weeks has talked about a one-time funding using some of the excess tax that's been collected because the economy's been in relatively good shape the last couple of years. What would that do for us?
So let me give you a little history of that. Back in the Bredesen days, when there was more money coming into the gas tax and he was having a hard time balancing the budget, over a 4-year period they took about $300 million from the equity fund, from the transportation fund, and put it to the general fund. And I'll say the road builders stopped that pretty quick. Kent was involved in that. They can't do that now. And they paid back a little bit of that money. Right now, there's $261 million that hasn't been returned back to the Department of Transportation. There are some legislators are saying, well, let's don't raise taxes. Let's just give them that $261 million, and that'll solve the problem. Well, I can tell you right now, I've got like 7 projects that cost that much money. So I can take that $261 million and build one road with it. So again, what we want to say is one-time influxes of cash don't solve our problem, because we have a continuing problem. It continues. It's not a one-time fix. And so you can't apply one-time money to a multiple year. There's not a multiple year fix. We just have continue to grow.
Right.
So I'll take them, and I'd be glad to take it. And if they fund it July 1st, I'll have it spent by December 1st. So that doesn't solve the problem.
What would solve the problem, number-wise? From what I understand, we're $6 to $8 billion behind. Is that the number? Or?
Well, in the next couple of weeks, I think you'll see that the governor's going to roll out a building program that we've been working on for a while. That was part of part of the backlog. We have a $6.1 billion backlog. That's just projects that we've already started, we spent money on, and that's how much more money we have to spend on those projects in order to finish them. MacHatcher is one of those projects as an example. So that you take those up all over the state, we have $6.1 billion. But there are projects across the state that we haven't even started that we need to do. As an example, how about widening 65 from 840 down to Saturn Parkway? That's not a project yet. Needs to be.
Yeah.
But it hasn't. We haven't spent a nickel. So when we start a project, we give it a PIN number.
Right.
And so, and I call it, that's when the project is fertilized. That's what I'm using. And so, and so there's a lot of projects that haven't been fertilized yet. And
Right.
so I think you're going to see a plan that comes out that's going to say to the people, okay, here are the projects that we think the state needs in the next 25 years to maintain and to stay where we are or improve in some cases where we are. So y'all look at that and decide if you agree. And if you agree, then let's figure out how we're going to pay for it. Now those projects, paying for things is interesting. It's not just a one-time cash, because that would be a big number. But it's also a combination of money and time. So as an example, if we decide not to do anything right now, I've got a $6.1 billion backlog. I can complete that backlog. Now what that means though is I don't fertilize any projects. I haven't done that. I haven't started any projects in the last 2 years. I'm not going to start one this year. So it'll be 3 years since we've started a new project. But if I just work on my backlog, it will be 2034 before I finish my backlog. So it'll be 2035 before I can start a project that I haven't started right now. So if we all want to wait that long, we're fine. I'll be dead. It won't matter. Well, let's see.
I don't know if you'll be dead or not, John.
I may be dead.
You may be dead.
On the way to my office today. But, so it's really a matter of money and time. And if we're patient enough, if we don't think we need new roads, if we think that we can survive and do what we need to do, then we can not raise any money. We will get them built by 2034. And we can start then maybe working on I-65 from 840 to Saturn Parkway in 2035. Now, it's 20 years from now. But
Andy Ogles and Americans for Prosperity doesn't want to raise any tax for anything. Now, what's their answer to this? I mean, how?
They don't have one.
Okay.
So so I love that question. I'd love to ask everyone in the audience, what's prosperity mean to you? Prosperity means to me jobs, and being able to have my son just bought a house in Franklin. I'm so excited about that because he's got a job and he can afford to buy a house barely. Thank goodness we can talk a little bit about affordable housing at some point in time. But he was able to do that. That's prosperity. Not having people unemployed is a horrible thing or is a good thing. And so they just say, well, we don't want to take money out of, gas prices are low, and so people for the first time in a long time have a little bit extra spending money in order to do what they want to do, and so don't take that Big Mac or that cup of coffee out of their hands once a week. Let them spend it. That doesn't create prosperity. It just doesn't, because the money we spend on roads creates jobs, which creates all sorts of prosperity. So they need to change their name to Americans for Nothing or something, because prosperity is what we're trying to do. And so I would challenge any of you all to start thinking about that. That the multiplier effect for building roads has huge information about what the expenditure from a state government level on roads does to the economy, and it's a whole lot different than normal government expenditures, which provides services. Providing services is, you know, the health department over here, and they do a great job, but it doesn't have a huge economic return. It just provides health care for those that need health care. We not only do we provide a huge return on your investment when it comes to just applying construction jobs, but the jobs that they create because we did it. Hankook Tires, $30 million. They did $2 billion and 4,000 employees. You know, there's all sorts of those opportunities there, and we have to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And if we don't, we will find out what the antithesis of prosperity is, and that's what the Americans for Prosperity are really asking us to do. Well, it's a short-sighted approach.
And let me actually jump in on that, because it seems like they've got the loudest voices, John. So what would you say to this audience and the people at home watching? What do you suggest they do to make sure their voices are heard in this conversation?
Talk to their legislators. It's purely local. I think the federal government is about ready to pass a long-term transportation plan, maybe in the next 30 days. It looks like it's moving that way. But everybody says, well, that's great. But it provides no additional dollars. It just says you're going to get what you've been getting, but we're going to guarantee that you're going to get it. And so that means that we still have the issues that we have before. So it's a statewide, and the federal government is quickly moving to making states be more responsible for their transportation needs than the federal government. I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. In fact, I'd just soon not pay any federal gas tax and let me have the money and let me do with it what I would like. I think that would be the best way. That's not going to happen, but I'm happy with having more responsibility. But when given responsibility, then you have to take that responsibility and do something with it. And that means you have to maintain and reinvest. And look, we are a state that is moving and growing, and in order to do that, we have to reinvest in our state. Our city people are doing a great job doing that, investing in their community with the things that they're doing. And we have to continue to do that on statewide level, and we're just not able to do it.
One more political question, then I want to get a kind of a project update from you, John. But what do our state legislators need to do or not do that is there something they need to be doing that we
I see
should
none
encourage
of them
them?
I see none of them are here. I find that real interesting, just as a matter of fact. And that should bring some attention to you all. So how many of y'all think transportation is important in Williamson County? Yeah, okay.
I think that's everybody.
That might be why they're here. It's funny that our legislators are not here.
That
I think that's all I got to say.
that's all you got to say. All right, enough about politics.
I love politics. Hey, listen.
It would definitely help our ratings, Dave. Keep going this route.
Well, and the other thing is, I live in a world of politics. So no matter what we're talking, if you're going to ask me about projects, we're talking about politics. I'm going to go back to say, when you ask me that, say, give me some money, I'll build the roads.
Let's talk about projects just for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for questions, or I'll draft a few from the audience. But give us an overall Williamson County update on the projects. I mean, we can go geographically, or you can give us the big picture. But
you're talking about ones we have under construction?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I think the one that everybody has seen a lot of is the 65 expansion down to 840. That's the second of 2 phases. So the first phase was 96 down to just north of Goose Creek, and then the second phase is Goose Creek down to 840. We're on time. Construction's moving along very well. It should all be open, I think, in about a year total. We had a little mishap along the way with a bridge that we had to do, but interesting enough, actually, we've caught up back to where we need to be on that construction on that bridge, and I'm really proud. I think And I do want to, and I saw Rogers came in here at some point in time. He might have left, but he's heard me enough. But there's a great coordination between the city, the county, and all of their people and the state in that project. Not only immediately when there was, a fatality, but a lot of danger there in that coordination. But then the coordination that it took to help us with detours and all the things that were happening, that was a great concerted effort. It helped us focus on what we needed to do was to get that bridge back open as quickly as possible, or actually not get it back open, build a new one as quickly as possible, and try to provide as little inconvenience to the citizens as possible. So I was really happy about the way that worked. We built that bridge in 102 days.
It was an amazing.
But I want to take a lot of credit for that. Don't expect that to happen all the time.
That's what I was going to ask. Why don't all our projects move like that?
Well, have you seen Fast Fix 8?
I have not.
You need to study your reports a little
I
bit
missed
more.
That one.
We replaced, actually, there's actually 10 bridges because we took 2 down to 1. But this weekend will be the last of 8 weekends that we've shut down I-40 right next to Nashville and replaced bridges. And we're replacing them. We're shutting the interstate down on Friday evening at 8 o'clock. We're tearing down a bridge, and we're putting a new bridge back in place and open the interstate back up by Monday morning at 6 o'clock. And it's a great method. We build bridges off-site, and we truck them in and put them in place. And
that sets a bad precedent. 'Cause now we expect that on all the
that's fine,
projects.
and we're happy to do that actually. And so that way we actually only had, I mean, think of that. So it would have taken about 2.5 years to build those bridges in the normal way, which means that the I-40 so it goes 65 and you go left to take 65 or take 40. We'd have had lane closures continually for 2.5 to 3 years, and we only had them for 8 weekends. Now it's expensive to do it that way because you have to do a lot of prep. On the bridge over here, the reason why we built that so quick is we had the steel had already been manufactured because that was the new bridge. And so we had already ordered the steel. It was already there. It had already been manufactured. And so we basically, all we had to do is ship it in. Okay. And that's why it doesn't. It takes 6 to 9 months just to, once they do the shop drawings for the bridge, to go have the steel produced. And so but fortunately that had already been done because that was the second bridge that we were going to build. The first one is the one that melted that we had to tear down, and the old one. So that's kind of the way it works. When you drive over, it's only going to look like one bridge. It's really 2 bridges. They just fixed together.
Looking at the Transportation Improvement Program from the MPO, it appears to me the next 2 or 3 major projects that have not been, the construction hasn't been started, is Franklin Road from Concord down to Moore's Lane, Columbia Avenue from Downs Boulevard down to McHatcher, and then Spring Hill Duplex Road. What's the timing on those projects?
Okay, so I think the good news is talking about Columbia Avenue. We partnered with the city of Franklin, and the city of Franklin is using their STP dollars, federal STP dollars, to fund Columbia Avenue from Downs to McHatcher, and the state's agreed to put in the 20% match. So that's a great partnership there. And Ken, I think that's 2017. Maybe we're going to start. I don't know if you know that date, but
we just started doing the environmental on it.
Right.
And we've let the contract. I think we're in the final stages of negotiating that contract.
So 2017, 2018, cities. That's a great partnership in order to do that.
Right.
The other 2 projects are in the backlog.
In the backlog. And that means that when the money is available, they will be started.
Sometime between now and 2034.
Got a great audience this morning. Y'all been engaged in in the conversation, it looks like, and we'd love to have some of you come up and ask questions, comments, and if you don't, we'll be glad to call on some folks. Mindy, looks like you're first,
Always.
and introduce yourself to us.
Hi, I'm Mindy Tate with Franklin and Morrow, and was part of the trip to Austin as well. John, we saw while we were there that they built 90 miles of toll roads through voter-approved funding referendums and mechanisms. Toll roads, I guess, are another way of perhaps looking at construction. So your thoughts on toll roads in Tennessee, if that's a way that new roads can be built?
Okay, so personally, I think toll roads are okay. I think that they are the ultimate user fee, and I don't think in all regard. I think most of us kind of understand user fees. You pay for what you use, your cell phone, your electric bill. I think most of us are okay with that. Unfortunately, we've kind of gotten to the point where we all expect our roads to be quote unquote. They used to be called freeways. I mean, for God's sake. So, now they're called anyway. We used to call them freeway. There's the freeway. Let's go get on it. I'm my generation, I guess. But I think we're just going to have to look at how we fund transportation. And we'll say, so I said that was my opinion. The governor's opinion is he's not for toll roads, so we won't have toll roads during his administration. But long term, I'm actually looking at building and I'm in the final phases of a feasibility study right now to build a toll bridge in Chattanooga, north of Chattanooga, from 75 over to Saudi Daisy, and if I build that, it will reduce the traffic time from that side of the river to if you lived in Saudi Daisy and were going to Knoxville and had to go down to Chickamauga Lock and back up, it's about a 40-mile drive. And if I build a toll bridge, it's about a 10-mile drive. And so how much would you pay to save 30 miles and 40 minutes? Truckers would pay a lot because you think about the gas that they're burning just on it. So I think it's a way to do it. I think, though, the progression is not necessarily start with toll bridges, but start with what we call dynamic pricing for roads. So if we were to relook at how we did certain things, would people be willing to pay money if you had to go to Nashville and you left at 7:30 and had to be there by 8:15 and there was lots of traffic? Would you pay $3 to get into a lane where you could drive the speed limit? And there are a lot of states that are doing it. Texas is doing that. Florida's doing that. In fact, Texas and Florida and a couple other states are not building any new capacity project whatsoever without a funding feature involved in it. That's their. And the other interesting thing about those states, and take Florida as an example, right now 55% of our money is federally funded. So 45% is state. Florida is under 30% federal. And the reason being is they've got a revenue feature within most of the roads that they build. Have you all driven to Destin lately? There's a new toll road in Destin. It's fabulous. You miss Niceville, and it costs you like $3. I mean, I'd do that every day to miss Niceville. So the Mid-Bay Bridge.
But another 10 cents on the gas tax, and we don't have to worry about stuff like that. Is that right?
No, I didn't say that either. It's a matter of convenience and a matter of how much time do you want to spend in your car. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I don't care really. So it's up to everybody to say, do I want to spend live in Murfreesboro and try to drive to Nashville? Okay, so here's an interesting story. The first lady, not Michelle Obama, but the governor's wife, was visiting a daycare center in Murfreesboro not too long ago. And she was talking to them, and they said, we've got a huge problem, and we've had to change what we do as daycare. They told her that they are now staying open till 8 p.m. because the parents that worked in downtown Nashville couldn't get to the daycare in time. If they left at 5 o'clock, it would take an hour or two to get to Murfreesboro. And so they're staying open till 8, and they're providing food for the children and food for the adults so that they could sit and have a quick meal and go home and do their family stuff rather than go home, pick the child up, go home, start cooking supper and do all the crazy stuff you got to do, and then put your kid to bed and then, die on the couch. I mean, so it's changing the family dynamics.
Yeah.
Which is, and think of those parents. They're probably leaving home at 6:30 and getting home at 8. Well, what kind of life is that? And so we've got to do something.
Yeah. Kent Starwalt where are you, Kent? How about coming up here and giving a road builder's perspective on this just right quick?
I saw him. He was slinking down.
Kent is the president of the Tennessee Road Builders Association. I think that's correct, isn't it? And what are we missing? Have we covered the territory today, or is there something else?
The commissioner's done a fabulous job talking about the need and talking about what needs to be done. As he alluded to, the only thing we probably disagree on is that there's always capacity in the construction industry to build whatever he needs to have built. But we clearly have a problem. And to really address what he talked about economically, for every dollar we spend in transportation construction generates $2.50 in economic activity. That is prosperity. And the jobs that we provide, our industry provides about 35,000 jobs statewide. There's another 35,000 indirect jobs. But we also support 1.5 million jobs in the state that deal with tourism and retail and manufacturing. So that's what's important about our transportation system. Again, providing education, providing jobs, reducing congestion, improving safety. And that's really the big answer. The big question is, what are we willing to pay to make sure that we have that quality of life that we're looking for?
Right.
Is it a Starbucks a month? And we think it is.
So we need to start a Tennesseans for Prosperity to take on the Americans for Prosperity, it sounds like.
Sure. We have the Transportation Coalition of Tennessee that we have out there that we're working on to try to address this issue.
Great. See a couple other questions back there. Go ahead and step up here and
Thanks, Ken.
tell us who you are, Mark.
Good morning, Commissioner. I'm Mark
Mark.
Cleveland.
Hey, Mark.
We've had a conversation with the group that went down to Austin. I apparently got a chance to see Google's self-driving car conversation, and I haven't heard anything about that today. So not having been in one, perhaps you could speak about what that experience is like and what you see the future of the self-automated vehicle.
Thanks, Mark. Mark and I had a conversation about that not too long ago. I gave a speech yesterday, and autonomous vehicles are going to be here. I mean, you just need to know that. And they're probably going to be here sooner than you think. In fact, they're really kind of already here, because we're now driving cars that vibrate when you change a lane, or they tell you if car's too close to you in your mirror. They brake if you get too close. I mean, so that's what autonomous vehicles. And it's like, it's not just going to happen. It's going to be a gradual process. But I have ridden in an autonomous vehicle, as Mark mentioned, and it was in Detroit. Of all, well, that would probably make sense. But it was actually an Acura, and they're not made in Detroit. But anyway, for 30 minutes we drove around, got on the interstate, drove through on the interstate, got off the interstate, drove through downtown Detroit, and the guy behind the wheel never touched the wheel, and we did everything exactly right. And it's scary as I said the word yesterday. It's scary, but we're on television. I don't want that to be
very scary.
very scary. Yeah. But it's going to happen, and it's really interesting. Our question is, and my thoughts are, we have to be prepared for that. So a couple things we have to do. One is we have to be prepared legally, policy-wise, that our laws allow that to happen, and we understand, what the enforcement is and how they happen. you know, they're companies like Uber and everything else. I mean, pretty soon Uber's going to come pick you up and you're going to get in a car without a driver. It's just going to take you to where, and it's already going to know where you want to go because you put it in, and when you did, and you've already been paid, and it'll just pull up and you'll get in a car. You won't have to say anything. There's nobody to talk to, and and off you go to where you're going, and that's going to happen. The other thing, but think about that from our standpoint, which is really interesting. And how it impacts us, I'm not positive. But the driverless cars, autonomous cars, are really, really smart. And so not only do they know when they change lanes and stuff, but they know what the 30 cars in front of them are doing. So 30 cars in front of them, somebody may be putting on a brake, and your car's going to know it, and it's going to say, okay, a quarter mile in front, there's a brake, we need to slow down. They're going to know that there's an accident somewhere. They're going to know everything they need to know because they're communicating not only from what we call infrastructure, which is all the information that we get about what's going on roads, but they're going to be talking to the cars next to them. You know, that car up there's got a turn signal on it. You didn't even notice it or whatever. But one other thing, and because that happens, so we may, instead of having an HOV lane, which is not enforced, but instead of having an HOV lane, we may have, that's a whole nother story, we may have an autonomous vehicle lane. And so let's say you're deciding to go, you want to go to Birmingham, and you have an autonomous vehicle. You get into the autonomous vehicle lane, and instead of going 70, you're going 100. And you're only 10 feet behind the car in front of you because everybody knows that car is going to be going. Nothing's going to happen. So all of a sudden, you have almost like a train, but you're in your own car, and you're 10 feet away from the car in front of you, but you're both going to Birmingham, and off you go. Yep. That's going to be here. It's going to be here before most of us are not here, before Pam puts us into the ground. And so...
Just pray that nobody has a blowout.
Well, but you'll know about it. I mean, you know, so, I mean, there's always that possibility, but that's where we're going, and that will be here before we, so we as a department have to understand that, have to be prepared for that, yep. and we have to have laws that will allow for that.
Time for one more quick question, and
look at it,
somebody back here. Go ahead, young man. I say young. You look young.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Quint Qualls. I'm with the Homepage Media Group, and I have a couple of questions about Spring Hill, so I'll just kind of roll them into one. Number one, with Duplex Road, I understand that the city's actually acquiring all of the right-of-way. Does that mean that it's on backlog until the right-of-way is ready to go for that?
Well, it's on backlog until the state gets the money to do what they need to do. But, you know, it does help to have cities and counties participate in things like acquiring right-of-way or acquiring other things. And so it will help move it up the list, but it still takes money for us to do what we need to do.
Okay, and are there any plans to widen Highway 31 in the future? Or is that on backlog as well?
Everything's on backlog at this point in time.
Okay,
We've got $6.1 billion. A lot of it's on backlog. But we're looking at, we are looking at that. And we're actually talking to the Spring Hill people about what their needs might be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we've got about 2 minutes, John. Anything else you want to say about our legislators or?
If I said enough about that, I'll probably get a phone call from the governor's office when I get back. If I got 2 minutes, I want to say.
You got one.
1 minute. Well, let me just say that then. This is an exciting time for the state of Tennessee. We have a great opportunity to really make sure that we continue to be one of the leading states in attracting new and high-quality jobs. We don't want to fall behind Georgia and North Carolina and Alabama and Kentucky and Virginia that have already looked at doing something and funding transportation. Not that transportation is the sole source of things, but it's an integral part. So we're going to have to do something.
John, appreciate your coming and spending your time with us this morning. I know you're a busy guy, and we appreciate that. Matt, you're now the in charge of the county initiative to look at these things. So have you got a 30-second commercial on that?
Well, you know, we had several references to the trip we took to Austin, and the big focus of that was, like I mentioned, affordable housing, transportation and education, and we know that's a critical piece. And I will say, what we do is always going to be in partnership with other organizations, including specifically the county mayor's office. So, trying to figure out what is the follow-up from the transportation summit, and how do we take care of Williamson County first, and understanding how it connects to the rest of the region. Right. So the most important thing is that we both understand is that wasn't just a one-time conversation. That conversation continues, and how can we actually impact and make a difference. And I don't think we're looking to do any more studies. We're actually figuring out, okay, how can we push the ball forward in this conversation and get to the point where there's opportunities to work on some of these projects. I mean, we spent an hour talking about transportation, barely mentioned transit. That's certainly a part of it as well. So It's a very complicated conversation with a lot of groups that are involved. I view our role as to bring those groups together and make sure that we plot a vision and then incrementally get there on that vision.
They're fixing to cut us off. And
Okay.
I want to say thank you for John being here. Newt Danley and the crew from WCTV, our chamber staff, and for Vanderbilt University Health. We really appreciate the help that they all give us. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate the participation, and look forward to our next show, which will be the last Friday in January. So come back to see us.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it.